What did Americans eat during the Great Depression? During the Great Depression, 20 to 30s of the last century, they presented the world with some hellish recipes. We have prepared a selection of exquisite dishes eaten by U.S. citizens. It is worth noting that the author of most of the culinary masterpieces was the wife of the then president, Eleanor Roosevelt. She became the model of a tireless and resourceful hostess, despite the fact that she herself was rarely hungry. So get to know the recipes for gastronomic delights that today seem to make a mockery of the products and those who agreed to eat them. Onions stuffed with peanut butter. Can you imagine eating a stewed onion soaked in oil of dubious quality? Eleanor Roosevelt suggested this recipe to American housewives when they ran out of food. There was no shortage of onions and peanut butter. So Mrs. Roosevelt suggested stuffing peeled onions with peanut butter and sautéing them in a pan in a peanut butter-based sauce. Those who tried this dish said it was a disgusting, smelly mess. Casserole à la Presidente. Eleanor Roosevelt insisted that the president was also in a difficult situation and ate what the people ate. She presented the public with a recipe for casserole à la Presidente, claiming that her husband regularly ate this delicacy. It involved cooking pasta until it was sticky and mixing it with mashed cooked carrots. The mixture was baked and served with a sauce. The sauce was made from water, flour, and salt. If Mr. Roosevelt really ate such a masterpiece, then he was either terrified of his wife or madly in love with her. Mulligan's tobacco stew. This recipe was invented by slum dwellers before the Great Depression. The poorest people in the country managed to survive in any circumstances. Who would have thought that thousands of wealthy Americans would soon be feeding this dish to their children? The recipe is based on the simplest of ingredients: corn, potatoes, onions, and beans. The ingredients were to be cooked in a small amount of water, but the flavor of the dish was given by a secret ingredient. At the end of cooking, a handful of tobacco had to be thrown into the pot, and it was better that it was cheap. Milcorno. This product was invented by American scientists to give local people something to feed their children. In essence, it is similar to glue, but milcorno is a mixture of skimmed milk powder, cornmeal, and salt. The idea was to pour the mixture into a hot liquid and serve it as mashed soup or porridge. Researchers at Cornell University calculated that such a diet would help people survive. A family would spend no more than $5 a week on food. Liver meat. During the Great Depression, meat became a luxury. But how to do without it? Use liver, of course. But offal was also in short supply. So people started making a mixture of crushed beans and pulses. Crushed peanuts or butter were added to the mixture. The dish was served as falafel or meat bread. The wealthiest Americans included a little liver in the composition of the fake meat. But there were not many of them. Dandelion wine. During the Great Depression, Americans did not want to give up alcohol. Alcohol was made from the juice of dandelion stems. It had to be fermented and infused. Spices were added to improve the taste. The perfect snack with a glass of dandelion wine is dandelion leaves fried in peanut oil or fresh dandelion flowers. SOS. This dish was invented by American soldiers. Its full name is shit on a shingle. Chunks of corned beef, green peas, vinegar, citric acid, gelatine. The mixture was spread on a galette. Such a sandwich became a luxury for many Americans during the Great Depression. Hoover's stew. Remember that it was President Herbert Hoover who is credited with starting the Great Depression. The head of state's name was always associated with poverty. When Americans wanted to talk about extreme poverty, they used the former president's name. This is how the term Hoover car was coined, a cart made from an old car. One of the dishes of the Great Depression was also named after Herbert Hoover. It was made from the simplest of products, namely pasta, or sausages, canned peas, tomatoes, or corn. The pasta was boiled and chopped sausage and a tin of tinned tomatoes or peas were added. Corn was allowed to be used as an analog. In principle, the dish is quite edible. Perhaps it can still help some bachelors and lazy hostesses. Desperate pies. Desperate women invented amazing baking recipes to somehow please family members. Familiar ingredients for pies were sometimes replaced with gruesome ones. For example, it was recommended that apples for Charlotte be replaced with apple cider vinegar. And the same meat with beans or peanut butter. Brunswick stew. Rabbit meat was traditionally used in this recipe, but these animals became rare. During the Great Depression, squirrels, opossums, raccoons, and other animals were used. The carcasses were cut up and made into a kind of thick soup. All available vegetables were added to the broth: peas, potatoes, corn, onions. The mixture was cooked and served at the table. To counteract the unpleasant smell of the dubious meat, spices were added to the finished dish. But even these did not always help. Coffee soup. This dish was usually served at breakfast. It replaced high-calorie sandwiches and scrambled eggs with bacon. Eyewitnesses say it was a very hearty soup that gave the body energy until lunchtime. The soup contains few ingredients. You will need slices of stale bread, boiling water, coffee. In the beginning, the coffee had to be boiled. If possible, sugar and cream were added. The drink was poured over the slices of stale bread in the plate. Breakfast was ready. Time to call the family to the table. Rubbish plate. This was the name of the dish served to the workers. They were working physically. They needed calorie-rich food. But where to get it? The men were given a dubious meal for lunch, known as the rubbish plate. A handful of fried potatoes, boiled pasta, sausages, and baked beans were placed in a container. All these ingredients were generously sprinkled with tomato sauce or mustard. In general, it was a hearty meal that satisfied the hunger and allowed one to work. Subscribe to the channel, like it, and let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching!